The Tower of London rises on the north bank of the River Thames, its pale stone walls standing as both fortress and tomb. For nearly 1,000 years, these battlements have watched over the city, sometimes as protector, often as silent witness to betrayal, imprisonment, and execution. At night, when the city quiets and the Thames flows dark and steady, the tower's stones seem almost to whisper. Built by William the Conqueror in the 11th century, the tower was meant to dominate, to inspire awe and fear in equal measure. Over the centuries, it became more than a fortress. It was a royal residence, a treasury, a menagerie, and above all, a prison. Kings and queens slept within its walls, but so too did traitors, prisoners of war, and those who had fallen from favor. Few left freely once the tower's gates closed behind them. The most famous of its spectral residents is Anne Boleyn, second wife of King Henry VIII. Condemned for treason, accused of adultery and witchcraft, she walked her final steps upon the Tower Green in May of 1536. The sharp stroke of the executioner's sword silenced her voice, but not her presence. Many claim to have seen her still, drifting silently through the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, where her remains lie. Some tell of a headless figure, clothed in Tudor dress, gliding beneath the moonlight along the battlements. Others whisper that she carries her severed head in her hands. Anne is not alone. Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days' Queen, met her end here as well. Young, intelligent, and caught in the cruel net of politics, Jane was barely 17 when she was executed on Tower Green in 1554. Her ghost, they say, wanders the same paths she walked in life, a fragile echo of a life cut short. The princes, Edward and Richard, sons of Edward IV, are perhaps the tower's most tragic figures. Hidden away in the tower by their uncle, Richard III, they vanished in the late 15th century. Historians still debate their fate, but many believe they were murdered, their young lives extinguished to secure a crown. Centuries later, the bones of 2 children were discovered beneath a staircase in the tower. Whether those remains belong to the princes remains uncertain, but their spirits, it is said, still wander, lost and searching, forever within these walls. Other restless souls are spoken of too. The White Lady, appearing in the Salt Tower, her spectral presence accompanied by the faint scent of perfume. Soldiers on night watch have reported phantom footsteps, the clang of unseen weapons, and the distant cries of anguish echoing through stone corridors long abandoned. Yet the tower's hauntings are not only tales of royalty and nobility. It has seen countless unnamed prisoners suffer in its dungeons. Their voices are said to remain, woven into the silence of the night. For every famous ghost, there are hundreds more, faceless but not forgotten, pressing against the fabric of the present with whispers of betrayal and torment. To walk the tower by day is to step into history. To walk it by night is to feel that history breathe. Each brick and stone seems heavy with memory. Perhaps this is why the tower remains one of the most haunted places in the world, not merely because of its bloody past, but because the weight of human sorrow, ambition, and betrayal refuses to fade. And so, the Tower of London stands eternal, its legends as enduring as its walls. It is a place where history and haunting intertwine, where the living and the dead seem forever bound. And as the city of London sleeps, the tower keeps its vigil, its ghosts restless beneath the moon. If you'll walk with me now, we leave behind the mist of London and make our way into the green heart of France's Loire Valley. Here, rising proudly above the vineyards and fields, stands the Château de Brissac. They call it the Giant of the Loire, for its towers climb 7 stories high, and its windows, over 200 of them, glitter in the sunlight like watchful eyes. By day, the castle is a marvel of Renaissance elegance, but by night, it tells a different story. The Brissac family has lived here for centuries. Noble titles, lavish banquets, political alliances, the castle has seen them all. Its golden age was filled with music and candlelight, but as with so many castles, tragedy lingers just beneath the polished surface. Let me share with you the most whispered tale, the story of the Dame Verte, the Green Lady. She was Charlotte de Brissac, the wife of one of the castle's lords. History tells us she was caught in an affair, a dangerous scandal in those unforgiving times. When her betrayal was discovered, her life was cut short, some say by her husband's hand, others by a quiet murder that was never spoken of openly. Whatever the truth, Charlotte never truly left these walls. Guests who have slept within the chateau sometimes speak of her presence. Imagine yourself in one of the richly furnished chambers, the air still, the fire fading low. Just before sleep claims you, you hear it, a faint sigh, a woman's breath carried across the room. If you open your eyes, you might see her, a tall figure clothed in green, her face pale and distorted, her eyes hollow with sorrow. She does not cry out, she does not move quickly. She simply lingers, as though waiting for someone who never arrives. The Green Lady often appears in the tower rooms and along the grand staircases. Those who see her describe a feeling that is not entirely fear, but something closer to melancholy, as though her sadness seeps into the very air. And once you leave, they say, the memory of her stays with you, a shadow at the edge of your thoughts. But Charlotte's tale is not the only story whispered here. Over the centuries, Château de Brissac has endured the turbulence of France's wars, the wars of religion, the revolution, the struggles of noble families rising and falling. Blood was shed, loyalties betrayed, and secrets buried within the stone walls. Perhaps this is why the chateau feels so alive with memory. Every step on the marble floors echoes with more than sound. It seems to carry the weight of centuries. And yet the castle is not only haunted by tragedy. Today, the Château de Brissac remains inhabited by the Brissac family. Its halls are filled with art, with laughter, with the warmth of living voices. But as the sun sets and the last guests retire to their rooms, the shadows lengthen and the past begins to stir. If you close your eyes here, you can almost hear the rustle of a gown trailing along the corridors, or the soft echo of footsteps climbing the staircase. And somewhere in the silence, perhaps, the Green Lady herself drifts past, a faint sigh trailing behind her, a reminder that love and betrayal can bind a soul to stone for all eternity. So, as we leave the Château de Brissac, let us carry her story gently with us, not as a tale of terror, but as a whisper of history, still alive in the night air of the Loire. Now, let us leave the gentle vineyards of France behind and journey north, where the wind grows sharper and the nights stretch long. On a rocky hill rising above the Scottish capital sits Edinburgh Castle, its dark silhouette etched against the sky. For more than 900 years it has watched over the city, part fortress, part royal palace, part prison. By day, tourists wander its courtyards, listening to tales of kings and battles.
But by night, it feels altogether different. The stone beneath your feet seems colder, the echoes of your steps linger longer, and sometimes, if you pause and listen closely, you might hear sounds that belong not to the present, but to the past. Edinburgh Castle is said to be one of the most haunted places in Scotland, and it is easy to understand why. Its walls have seen endless sieges, betrayals, and executions. Blood was spilled upon its cobblestones, and cries once rang out from its dungeons. It is no wonder that such suffering might leave an imprint behind. Perhaps the most famous of its restless souls is the headless drummer. He appears only as a warning, they say, a sign that the castle is about to face danger. No one knows exactly who he was in life. Some whisper he was a soldier, others that he was a boy executed for treachery. But those who claim to have seen him describe the faint beat of drums in the night echoing across the battlements, followed by the figure of a soldier with no head, his hands striking an invisible rhythm that fades slowly into silence. There are other spirits here too. Prisoners once held in the castle's dungeons are said to wander still. During the Napoleonic Wars, captured soldiers from France and later America were confined in dark, airless chambers beneath the fortress. Many never left alive. Those who walk through the vaults today often describe sudden drops in temperature or the feeling of unseen hands brushing against their skin. Some even hear whispered voices, though no one stands beside them. And then there is the spectral dog of the castle's cemetery. For centuries, loyal hounds of soldiers were buried here. Visitors sometimes speak of a small, ghostly terrier wandering among the gravestones, its paws making no sound. It is a gentler haunting, one that carries more sorrow than fear. Perhaps a reminder that even in places of cruelty, love and loyalty leave their marks too. But Edinburgh Castle is not haunted by its ghosts alone. It is haunted by history itself. For generations, it has been at the center of Scotland's struggles for independence, changing hands between English and Scottish kings, each new reign soaked with betrayal and blood. The very stones seem to hold those memories. If you and I were to stand upon the castle walls on a quiet night, the city of Edinburgh stretched out beneath us, the wind rattling through the flags, it would not be difficult to imagine that those who once lived, fought, and died here are still close at hand. Perhaps you would hear the faint roll of drums or the distant cry of a prisoner carried on the night air. Or perhaps you would feel only the weight of centuries pressing gently against you, reminding you that history never truly sleeps. And so we leave Edinburgh Castle behind, its torches flickering in the night. But as we step away, we carry with us the memory of its restless shadows, the drummer without a head, the prisoners who never saw freedom, and the loyal hound who still guards his masters. Now, let us travel east, leaving behind the windswept battlements of Scotland. We find ourselves in the Czech countryside, in a place where forests grow thick and shadows fall heavily across the land. Rising from a lonely stretch of rock stands Houska Castle. At first glance, it seems quiet, even unremarkable. Its pale walls and modest towers do not boast the grandeur of other fortresses we've seen. And yet, Houska holds a secret darker than most. Unlike other castles, Houska was not built to defend a kingdom nor to house royalty. No grand city rests nearby, no strategic river or trade road runs beneath its walls. Instead, Houska was built over something the locals once feared so deeply they believed it must be sealed away. Beneath the castle lies a great pit, a chasm in the earth. They called it a gateway to hell. Stories tell us that strange creatures were seen climbing from its depths, half-human forms with wings and claws, things not meant to walk in daylight. The villagers avoided it, but they also spoke of strange whispers and cries rising from the ground at night. In time, the land grew infamous. And so, in the 13th century, the castle was raised not as a fortress, but as a prison for what lay below. Its chapel, placed directly over the pit, was meant to act as a seal, a sacred weight pressing down upon the darkness. Even today, when you stand in that chapel, the air feels heavier. The walls are painted with faded frescoes, angels, saints, but also strange, unnatural figures, half-human creatures, archers drawing arrows with their left hands, an image considered unnatural and sinister in medieval times. Some say these paintings are warnings, messages to those who would dare to come too close. And then came the centuries of war. During the Nazi occupation of Czechoslovakia, Houska was seized by German forces. Rumors claim they were drawn here not by its beauty, but by its legends. The castle, they believed, might hold a hidden power, perhaps even a doorway to realms they wished to command. Locals whispered of strange experiments carried out within its walls, of soldiers who entered the chapel and never returned. To this day, no one knows for certain what occurred during those years, but shadows of the past seem to cling to the castle still. Visitors to Houska often describe unsettling sensations, a sudden chill in the air, though no wind blows, the feeling of being watched, even when the room is empty. Some claim to hear faint cries from beneath the chapel floor, as though the pit still stirs in the darkness. Others speak of phantom figures, hooded shapes drifting silently across the courtyard, or vibrant shadows flitting across the stone walls just beyond the edge of vision. And yet there is also a strange calm here. For though the castle is filled with dark stories, its stones seem almost tired, as though they have carried their burden for too many centuries. To sit quietly within its halls is to feel the weight of both fear and protection, for Houska was built not to unleash terror, but to contain it. If you listen carefully in the stillness of the night, you might hear a whisper from below, a sound that is neither wind nor voice, but something caught between. And as you drift toward sleep, you may wonder, is Houska truly guarding us from what lies beneath, or is it guarding whatever lies beneath from us? And so we leave the castle, its lonely towers receding into the darkness, the chapel still standing watch above the pit. Whether legend or truth, Houska remains a place where the veil between worlds feels thinner, and where the stones themselves seem to breathe with secrets too heavy to be spoken aloud. Our journey now takes us west, across the waters, into the rolling green fields of Ireland. Rising above the countryside in County Offaly stands a fortress known as Leap Castle. At first glance, it seems like any other stronghold. Gray stone walls, narrow windows, its tower watching quietly over the land. But Leap Castle has a reputation darker than most. It is often called the most haunted castle in all of Ireland. The story begins with the O'Carroll clan, a powerful family who ruled this land centuries ago. They were fierce, ambitious, and ruthless. Their castle became less a home and more a stronghold of power, a place where enemies were crushed, and even family ties meant little when ambition was at stake.
One of the castle's darkest tales is remembered as the Bloody Chapel. Inside its walls, the O'Carroll brothers once quarreled over succession, who should lead the clan after their father's death. One day, during a gathering in the chapel, one brother turned upon another, cutting him down with a sword while he prayed at the altar. The stone floor drank in his blood, and the chapel has never truly lost its stain. Even now, visitors say they feel a heaviness there, a sorrow that clings to the air like dust. But that is only one betrayal among many. Beneath the chapel lies an oubliette, a hidden dungeon, a narrow pit into which prisoners were dropped, left to die slowly in the dark. When the chamber was discovered centuries later, the remains of hundreds were found piled within it, their bones bearing silent witness to cruelty. Some say their spirits never left, and that their cries still echo faintly beneath the castle floors. The most chilling presence, however, is known simply as the elemental. Unlike the ghosts of men and women, the elemental feels older, stranger, as though it is something born of suffering itself. Those who encounter it describe a dark, oppressive figure, cloaked in shadow, with eyes that glow faintly in the gloom. They say the air grows foul in its presence, filled with the stench of decay. Whether it is the spirit of someone wronged, or something far older drawn to the castle's cruelty, no one can say for certain. But its legend is enough to unsettle even the bravest of visitors. Yet not all who wander Leap Castle speak of terror. Some describe voices in the halls, soft, indistinct, as though a conversation continues just out of reach. Others feel sudden drops of cold, or see flickers of light where no torch burns. And a few tell of gentler spirits, children's laughter echoing faintly, as though not all who linger here are bound in sorrow. To stand in Leap Castle is to feel history pressing in from all sides. The stones remember bloodshed and betrayal, but also love, family, and the passing of generations. Perhaps that is why it feels so alive, because its walls hold the weight of everything that has happened there, refusing to let any of it fade completely. As we step away from the castle now, imagine the chapel behind us, its altar cold, its shadows deep. The night outside is quiet, but the silence feels heavier here, as though even the land itself remembers what was done. And if, as you drift to sleep, you hear a faint whisper in the dark, perhaps it is only the memory of Leap Castle, reaching across centuries to remind you of the lives it holds still. Now, let us leave the misty green fields of Ireland and make our way to the rugged mountains of Romania. Here, perched high upon a rocky cliff, stands Bran Castle, its towers piercing the sky, its walls rising stark against the Carpathian landscape. Even before you step inside, the castle feels different, its presence looming, its silence watchful. For many, Bran Castle is known by another name, Dracula's Castle. Though history tells us that Vlad the Impaler, the cruel prince of Wallachia, never truly made this fortress his home, his legend clings to it like a shadow that cannot be shaken. And when you walk its narrow stairways, its hidden passages, its dimly lit halls, it is easy to see why. Vlad III, known as Vlad the Impaler, was a ruler both feared and remembered for his ruthlessness. In the 15th century, he defended his lands against the encroaching Ottoman Empire, but he is remembered less for his victories and more for the manner in which he waged war. His enemies were impaled on stakes, their bodies left standing as grim warnings to others. Forests of the dead, some called them. It is little wonder that his legend inspired tales of the vampire, creatures of the night who feed upon the living. But Bran Castle itself has its own stories. Over the centuries, it was a fortress, a customs post, a royal residence, and a prison. Its dungeons once held captives in chains, and some never returned from the darkness below. Visitors who enter these lower chambers often speak of a suffocating heaviness, a weight that seems to settle upon the chest as though the air itself remembers the suffering that once filled these rooms. At night, the castle's atmosphere shifts. The wind whistling through the mountains seems to carry voices with it. Shadows flicker against the stone walls where no flame burns. Some have spoken of figures moving silently along the battlements, shapes that dissolve into mist when approached. Others tell of phantom footsteps echoing up staircases, though no one is there. And there are softer hauntings, too. Some visitors claim to have felt sudden chills, followed by a warmth, as though unseen hands brushed gently past them. Perhaps these are the spirits of those who lived and died here long before the legends of Vlad. Souls who linger not in anger, but simply in memory.
The truth of Bran Castle lies somewhere between history and legend. Its walls have known blood and betrayal, yes, but also kings and queens, merchants and travelers, music and laughter. Yet when the torches burn low and the castle settles into silence, it is the darker whispers that seem to rise the loudest. If you were to stand here with me now, upon the castle's highest tower, the night stretching out over the Carpathian Mountains, you might feel a prickle at the back of your neck. Perhaps it is only the cold wind, or perhaps, for just a moment, you would feel the weight of centuries pressing close as though Vlad himself still watches from the shadows, his story forever bound to these stones. And so, as we step away from Bran Castle, let us remember it not only as Dracula's fortress of legend, but as a place where history and imagination blend into one, where ghostly whispers echo through the mountains, and where the line between myth and truth feels thinner than anywhere else. From Bran Castle's jagged cliffs, let us travel west, into the gentle forests of the Moselle Valley in Germany. Here, hidden among trees and mist, stands Burg Eltz, a fairy tale castle rising proudly above the river. Its towers are slender, its walls painted with soft colors, and unlike so many of the fortresses we have visited, Burg Eltz was never destroyed by war. For more than 800 years, it has stood, preserved by peace, carefully passed down through the same family. And yet, even here, in this storybook place, the past has left its shadows. The castle's halls are filled with the emblems of knights and noble families. You can almost hear the clatter of armor as you wander its courtyards, the echo of footsteps belonging to men who swore oaths of loyalty centuries ago. But loyalty does not always last forever, and it is said that betrayal has left its mark within these walls. One of the castle's most enduring whispers is the tale of a young countess who once lived here. Promised in marriage to a man she did not love, she is said to have resisted fiercely, her heart belonging to another. When her secret was discovered, her life was taken in silence, hidden away as though she had never lived. They say her spirit still lingers in the upper chambers, a quiet presence, who stirs only when someone enters the room she once called her own. Those who have slept within the castle claim to have heard soft weeping at night, though when they opened their eyes, the room was empty.
And there are whispers, too, of knights still keeping their watch. Guests have reported the faint clink of armor echoing down corridors, the sound of footsteps steady and firm, though no figure is ever seen. Some believe these are the spirits of men who died far from the castle, yet whose loyalty was so strong that they returned to stand guard in the place they called home. Unlike the darker fortresses we have visited, the atmosphere of Burg Eltz is gentler, more melancholic than frightening. Its ghosts seem less like restless terrors and more like memories too strong to fade away. To walk here at twilight is to feel both comfort and sorrow, as though the castle itself wishes to remind you that history is not only made of battles and blood, but also of love, of longing, and of promises broken. If you and I were to stand together upon its bridge as the mist rolled in from the valley below, we might hear only the river flowing and the soft rustle of the forest. But if we were quiet long enough, perhaps we would also hear the faintest echo, a knight's step upon the stone, or the sigh of a woman whose story was never told aloud. And so, Burg Eltz leaves us with a gentler haunting, one that drifts more like a song than a scream. It reminds us that even in places untouched by fire or sword, the human heart can leave behind whispers just as strong as war. Now, let us return to England, where rolling hills and quiet villages give way to one of the country's most infamous fortresses. Deep in Northumberland stands Chillingham Castle. By day, it looks almost serene, its battlements softened by ivy, its courtyards touched by sunlight. But as the evening deepens and the torches burn low, Chillingham reveals itself for what it truly is, one of the most haunted castles in Britain. Unlike Burg Eltz, which was spared from bloodshed, Chillingham's stones have absorbed centuries of cruelty. It was a stronghold during the violent border wars between England and Scotland, a place where prisoners were not simply confined, but broken. Beneath its floors lies a chamber that still makes the heart grow heavy, the torture room. Here, men and women once endured unthinkable pain. Iron boots, racks, spikes, devices designed not to kill swiftly, but to prolong suffering. The very walls seem to remember the cries, even after centuries of silence. And it is here, perhaps unsurprisingly, that the spirits still walk. The most famous is the Blue Boy, sometimes called the Radiant Boy. For years, guests in the castle's Pink Room reported hearing the sound of a child sobbing in the night. Then a flash of blue light would appear, and the figure of a young boy would manifest, dressed in tattered clothes, his face pale, his eyes filled with sorrow. During later renovations, bones were discovered within the walls, those of a child, along with scraps of blue fabric. Since then, sightings of the boy have grown fewer, but some still feel his presence, a reminder of the life once sealed away in stone. Another restless soul is Lady Mary Berkeley. She lived here in the 17th century, abandoned by her husband, who ran away with her own sister. Lady Mary was left alone, with her child, to wander the cold corridors of Chillingham. Today, many visitors describe the swish of her dress along the hallways or the sound of soft footsteps pacing endlessly, as though her heart still searches for something lost long ago. And there are darker whispers still. Some claim to feel unseen hands brushing against their shoulders, or hear low moans echoing through the halls when no one else is near. The chapel, once a place of prayer, is said to carry an uneasy silence, broken by faint murmurs too soft to understand. Even the castle's courtyard, bright by day, can feel oppressive at night, as though eyes are watching from windows that stand empty. Yet, there is something strangely gentle about telling these stories now, in the quiet of night. For while Chillingham's history is steeped in cruelty, the voices that remain seem to long not for vengeance, but for remembrance. They do not wish to be forgotten. They wish their pain, their sorrow, their loneliness to be acknowledged, even if only in whispers. If you and I were to stand together upon its bridge as the mist rolled in from the valley below, we might hear only the river flowing and the soft rustle of the forest. But if we were quiet long enough, perhaps we would also hear the faintest echo, a night's step upon the stone, or the sigh of a woman whose story was never told aloud. And so, Burg Eltz leaves us with a gentler haunting, one that drifts more like a song than a scream. It reminds us that even in places untouched by fire or sword, the human heart can leave behind whispers just as strong as war. Far from Europe's medieval towers, across the Atlantic, we find ourselves in the warmth of Florida. The waves of the Atlantic crash against the shore, gulls wheel overhead, and there, standing steadfast against both sea and time, is the Castillo de San Marcos. Built in the late 1600s by Spanish colonists, it is the oldest masonry fort in the continental United States. From a distance, it looks serene, its walls made of coquina stone, a pale, porous rock formed from seashells, shimmering softly under the sun. But though the sea breezes brush against its battlements, the air within the Castillo carries a different weight. Wars, sieges, and betrayals have all left their marks here, and with them the whispers of lives caught in the struggle.
The most famous story is that of a love triangle turned tragedy. Don Manuel de Montiano, the fort's commander, had a young and beautiful wife, Dolores, but whispers say her heart was not loyal to him. Instead, she loved Captain Abella, a dashing officer under her husband's command. When Montiano discovered their secret, he is said to have acted swiftly, coldly, and without a word. Both Dolores and the captain disappeared. No public trial, no farewell, only silence. Years later, explorers uncovered a sealed chamber within the walls of the Castillo. Inside, they found two skeletons. Some say it was Dolores and her captain, entombed alive by her jealous husband. Since then, visitors and guards alike have reported strange happenings near that chamber. Sudden chills in the heavy Florida air, the scent of perfume lingering where no one stands, and ghostly figures drifting through stone corridors when the night is still. The Castillo's haunted reputation does not end there. Soldiers who once stood watch along the walls are said to remain, pacing their eternal guard duty. Visitors sometimes describe hearing footsteps echoing on the ramparts, boots clicking against stone though no one is there. In the dungeons, the air grows colder still, and faint moans are said to rise as though prisoners from long ago still cry out in the dark. And yet, just as with Chillingham, the voices here feel more sorrowful than cruel. They remind us of human hearts torn between duty and desire, loyalty and betrayal. The coquina walls may have stood strong against cannon fire and storms, but they could not contain the restless emotions of those who once lived, loved, and died here. If you and I were to stand together on its ramparts at dusk, the sea wind lifting our hair, we might see only the horizon painted gold by the setting sun, but perhaps just for a moment, in the corner of our eyes, we would glimpse two figures hand in hand, forever bound by love and tragedy, disappearing into the walls that became both their prison and their tomb.
And so, the Castillo de San Marcos whispers not only of war, but of longing, betrayal, and the way human hearts leave traces that even centuries cannot erase. Ireland is a land of green hills and quiet valleys, where ruins often rise like teeth from the earth. Among them stands Leap Castle, a place both beautiful and terrible, where stories of blood and betrayal echo louder than in most. Many call it the most haunted castle in Ireland, and perhaps even in the world. From the outside, it looks much like any other fortress, a tall, weathered tower standing watch over the countryside. But within its walls, shadows gather thick. This is a castle that has seen centuries of family feuds, sudden murders, and whispered curses. The most chilling story belongs to what is now called the Bloody Chapel. Long ago, the powerful O'Carroll clan ruled Leap Castle. One night, during a service in the chapel, a violent quarrel broke out between brothers. One, a priest, was holding mass. The other stormed in, sword in hand, and in a moment of rage struck his brother down upon the altar. Blood stained the stones, and from that moment the chapel was no longer a holy place, but a wound in the heart of the castle. To this day, visitors say the chapel feels heavy, as though the very air remembers. Flickering lights have been seen glowing through its broken windows at night when no candles burn within. Strange shadows move across its floor, and sometimes faint chanting is heard, though the priests have long since gone. But Leap Castle's darkness does not end with one murder. Hidden within the chapel is a small chamber once used as a dungeon. Prisoners were dropped through a trapdoor into the pit below, a place with no escape. Centuries later, when the dungeon was cleared, Workers found the remains of hundreds of people, piled one upon another. Some had been left there for years. The weight of so many souls lingers still. Perhaps the most unsettling presence in Leap Castle is not tied to any single person. Locals speak of a creature known only as the Elemental. It is said to appear as a small, shadowy figure cloaked in foul air, its arrival marked by the stench of sulfur and decay. No one knows if it is a ghost, a spirit, or something older still. Those who have encountered it describe a deep sense of dread, as though the castle itself were alive and aware of them. And yet, for all its horrors, Leap Castle feels strangely mesmerizing. To tell its stories in the quiet of night is to feel both the fear of its tragedies and the pull of its history. Families have lived here, children have played in its halls, laughter has rung through its corridors, even amid the shadows. Like so many places we've visited, it is not only haunted by the dead, it is haunted by the full weight of life itself. If you and I were to climb the narrow staircase together, lantern in hand, the stones cold beneath our fingers, perhaps we would hear nothing more than the creak of old wood and the sigh of the wind. But perhaps, in the silence, we would also sense the chapel watching, its shadows holding their breath as if waiting for us to listen to what it still remembers. And so, Leap Castle stands as both fortress and tomb, a place where the past refuses to rest, and where the whispers are thick as the Irish mist that surrounds it. The city of Edinburgh is alive with history. Its cobbled streets twist and climb, its old stone buildings hold centuries of stories, and above it all, silhouetted against the sky, rises Edinburgh Castle. By day, it is a proud landmark, a symbol of Scotland's resilience, but at night, when the winds sweep across the battlements and the lights of the city flicker below, the castle becomes something else entirely. A place where ghosts walk, and the past breathes close. For more than 1,000 years, this fortress has been the heart of Scottish history. Kings were crowned here. Prisoners of war were locked away in its dungeons. Cannons roared from its walls in times of siege. Each stone seems to carry the weight of battles fought and lives lost. And with such history, it is no wonder that whispers still linger. One of the most famous spirits is the Lone Piper. Long ago, tunnels were discovered beneath the castle, winding beneath the city streets. To explore them, a young piper was sent below, playing his bagpipe so those above could follow his progress by sound. The music echoed at first, faint but steady, until suddenly it stopped. The piper never returned. Search parties found nothing. Since then, people have spoken of hearing the ghostly strains of bagpipes drifting from beneath the castle, soft, mournful notes rising from the earth as though the young man still wanders the tunnels, forever lost in the dark. Another figure often seen is a headless drummer. First reported centuries ago, the drummer is said to appear when danger threatens the castle. His form is rarely clear, but the beat of his drum has been heard, echoing across the ramparts, a warning from the other side. Some say he is the ghost of a soldier executed within the walls, others that he is simply the spirit of battle itself. The dungeons, too, hold their own ghosts. Here, prisoners from wars with France, America, and Spain were once chained in the cold darkness. Visitors today report sudden icy chills, the sound of chains rattling, or the faint cries of men long gone. Some even claim to feel hands pushing at their backs, urging them onward, as though desperate to escape. But perhaps the castle's most unsettling presence is not one spirit, but the atmosphere itself. Many who visit Edinburgh Castle at night describe a heaviness, as though the air thickens with memory. In the silence, the city far below seems distant, unreal, and one cannot help but feel the closeness of those who once lived, fought, and died here. And yet there is majesty as well as melancholy. For while the castle carries its ghosts, it also carries the resilience of a nation. To stand upon its battlements as the wind whips around you is to feel both the sorrow of its past and the strength that endures. The whispers of Edinburgh Castle remind us not only of loss, but of courage, loyalty, and the eternal march of history. If you and I were to walk its cobbled courtyards together, lantern in hand, the stones cold beneath our fingers, perhaps we would hear nothing more than the creak of old wood and the sigh of the wind. But perhaps, in the silence, we would also sense the chapel watching, its shadows holding their breath as if waiting for us to listen to what it still remembers. And so, Edinburgh Castle stands as both fortress and tomb, a place where the past refuses to rest, and where the whispers are thick as the Irish mist that surrounds it. In Japan, not far from the modern city of Himeji, rises a vision of elegance so striking that many call it the White Heron Castle. Himeji Castle gleams against the sky, its white walls and sweeping rooftops spreading like the wings of a bird in flight. By day, it seems serene, a symbol of beauty, strength, and harmony. But within its graceful form lie stories as dark as any dungeon, whispers of betrayal, love lost, and spirits that have not found peace. One of the most famous tales tied to Himeji Castle is that of Okiku. She was a servant in the household of a powerful samurai. Trusted and loyal, she carried out her duties faithfully, until one day she discovered a terrible conspiracy, a plan to betray the lord of the castle. Okiku warned her master, and in doing so, saved his life. But in the shadows, her enemies plotted against her.
According to legend, a jealous retainer tricked Okiku into believing she had lost one of the lord's 10 precious plates. To lose even one was punishable by death. Desperate, Okiku counted and recounted the plates. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but never 10. Again and again she searched, but the missing plate could not be found. In despair, she threw herself into the castle's well. Some say she was pushed, others that her heart broke under the weight of her fear, and from that day onward, her spirit lingered. At night, her voice could be heard drifting from the well, counting softly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then a wail of anguish when the 10th plate never came. The sound chilled the hearts of all who heard it. Even now, visitors say the well is touched by her sorrow. Some claim to feel a sudden coldness, as though unseen fingers brush the air. Others swear they have heard the faint sound of counting echoing up from the darkness below. But Okiku's story is not the only whisper within these walls. Himeji Castle has stood since the 14th century, a fortress for samurai lords during times of war. Battles raged around it, and men fought and died to defend it. Some believe the spirits of warriors still patrol its winding corridors and hidden gates, their loyalty binding them to the castle even centuries later. And yet, for all its ghosts, Himeji Castle feels different from the others we have visited. It does not brood or loom, it glows. Its hauntings carry a strange sadness, but also a kind of grace, as though the white heron itself lifts sorrow into something softer. If you and I were to stand together before Okiku's well at twilight, the castle glowing pale in the fading light, perhaps we would hear nothing but the chirp of crickets and the rustle of leaves. But perhaps, if we listened closely, we would hear a gentle voice counting from the depths, not to frighten us, but to remind us of a life cut short
and of loyalty paid for with sorrow. And so, Himeji Castle whispers not only of ghosts, but of beauty entwined with grief, like cherry blossoms falling in the spring wind. The Loire Valley is often called the Garden of France. Rolling hills, soft rivers, and endless vineyards stretch as far as the eye can see, and in the midst of this beauty stands Château de Brissac, towering, ornate, and immense. Known as the Castle of the 100 Windows, its golden walls and elegant turrets glow in the sunlight. But when night falls, its grandeur changes, for behind the windows and within its halls, one restless soul wanders still, the Green Lady. Her story begins in the 15th century. At that time, the castle was home to Jacques de Brissac, a powerful nobleman, and his wife, Charlotte de Brissac, the illegitimate daughter of King Charles VII. Their marriage, however, was not one of love, but of politics, and soon Charlotte's heart turned elsewhere. She found comfort in the arms of another man, but when Jacques discovered her betrayal, his fury burned without mercy. Legend says that one night, in a violent rage, he murdered both his wife and her lover within the castle walls. Their bodies were hidden, but their presence remained. The lover vanished into silence, but Charlotte, she became something more. Since then, she has appeared to generations of the Brissac family and to visitors who dared to spend a night within. She is known as the Green Lady for the long green dress she wears, drifting silently through the halls. Her face, however, is said to be horrifying, her eyes hollow, her features twisted, as though still frozen in the agony of her death. Those who see her often describe a sense of crushing sorrow, followed by an overwhelming urge to leave the castle at once. But she is not violent. Her presence is heavy, but not cruel. She seems to wander endlessly, more lost than vengeful, tied forever to the place of her betrayal and death. Guests who have spent nights at the chateau speak of footsteps echoing in empty corridors, of whispers carried through closed doors, and of sudden chills in otherwise warm rooms. Some even claim to have seen her drift across the grand staircase, her green gown glimmering faintly in the moonlight. Despite her sorrow, Château de Brissac is not only a place of ghosts. It remains the home of the Dukes of Brissac, its halls alive with laughter, family, and celebration. But perhaps that is what makes the Green Lady's presence all the more striking, for even in a house full of life, she cannot escape the chains of her past. If you and I were to stand together at the base of the grand staircase, lanterns flickering against the stone, we might hear nothing but the hush of the Loire night outside. But perhaps, if we listened closely, we would hear a faint shimmer of green fabric vanishing into the dark, a reminder that even beauty can hold tragedy, and that even the brightest castle can carry whispers of sorrow. And so, the Château de Brissac teaches us that betrayal leaves long echoes, and that love, when broken by violence, may never truly rest. Deep in the Czech countryside, far from busy towns, stands Houska Castle. At first glance, it looks like any other medieval fortress. High stone walls, sharp towers, a fortress designed for defense. But look more closely, and something feels unusual. Houska is built not on a border, nor near a river, nor in a place of trade. Instead, it stands in the middle of wilderness, with no strategic reason for its existence. And stranger still, its defenses face inward, as though the builders were not keeping enemies out, but keeping something in. For centuries, people have whispered the same story. Houska Castle was built over a great hole in the earth, a pit so deep and dark that it was said to be a gateway to hell itself. Locals feared it, claiming that creatures emerged from the abyss, winged, half-human things that brought terror to the land. To seal the hole, the castle was razed, its chapel built directly over the pit, prayers and stone laid down to hold back the unknown. But still, the whispers say, the darkness stirs. One of the oldest tales tells of prisoners offered a chance to freedom. They were lowered by rope into the hole, promised release if they reported what they saw below. The first man did not last long. Within moments of his descent, he screamed so terribly that they hauled him back up. When he emerged, his hair had turned white, his face twisted with fear. He lived only a few days more, never speaking of what he had seen. Others refused to go down. The hole was sealed, but the fear remained. Within the castle itself, visitors often speak of strange sights. Shadows flicker across the chapel walls when no candles burn. Growls or scratching noises echo from beneath the floors. Some claim to see figures, dark, twisted shapes that vanish when approached. Even in daylight, Houska carries an atmosphere of unease, a silence that feels heavy, as though the air itself is watching. Yet there are gentler whispers too. Some say a ghostly white horse appears near the castle, a symbol of purity protecting the land. Others believe the spirits of those who once prayed in the chapel still linger, offering a counterbalance to the darkness below. And so, Houska Castle remains a place of mystery more than history. Few great battles were fought here, few kings ruled from its halls.
Its story is not of crowns and conquests, but of something deeper, stranger, a fortress against the unknown. If you and I were to stand together in its chapel, the stones cool beneath our hands, and the silence stretching long, perhaps we would hear nothing at all. Or perhaps, from far below, a faint sound would rise. Not words, not music, but something older, a murmur from the dark reminding us that the earth still holds secrets we may never understand. And so, Houska Castle whispers of fear, faith, and the thin line between legend and truth. In the heart of London, where the Thames flows steady and the city hums with life, rises a fortress older than the city's streets, the Tower of London. It has stood for nearly 1,000 years, its pale stone walls once a symbol of royal power, its gates a place where hope and terror often met. Kings and queens passed through here, so too did traitors, prisoners, and victims of betrayal. And with each passing century, the tower gathered more shadows, more whispers, until it became not only a monument of history, but also one of the most haunted places on earth. The stories begin with royalty itself. Perhaps the most famous ghosts are the princes in the tower. Two young boys, Edward and Richard, were locked away in the tower in the late 15th century, declared illegitimate by their uncle, Richard III. One night they disappeared. Many believe they were murdered, their small bodies hidden within the stone. For centuries, their pale figures have been seen drifting hand in hand along the battlements, their faces sorrowful, their presence quiet, but unforgettable. Then there is Anne Boleyn, the second wife of Henry VIII. Accused of treason and adultery, she was executed here in 1536. Her ghost has been seen countless times, often carrying her own head, her form gliding silently through the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, where she is buried. Some say her presence carries not terror, but a strange dignity, as though she continues to walk with the grace she was denied in life. Other spirits linger too. Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen, is said to appear upon the anniversary of her execution, her sorrowful figure seen on the battlements. The ghost of Margaret Pole, An elderly noblewoman brutally executed is said to reenact her violent end, her screams echoing across the courtyard. Even the soldiers who once guarded the tower are said to remain, their heavy boots still marching through its stone passages. And then there are the stranger whispers. Ravens circle the tower even today, kept as guardians of legend. It is said that if they ever leave, the kingdom itself will fall. Visitors sometimes speak of hearing wings beating in the night, even when the birds are locked safe. Others describe sudden icy chills in rooms that moments before felt warm, as though an unseen presence has drifted too close. The Tower of London is not only a place of ghosts, it is also a place of remembrance. To walk within its walls is to feel the closeness of those who shaped history, not only kings and queens, but also children, prisoners, guards, and ordinary souls who met extraordinary fates. Its hauntings remind us that power and sorrow often go hand in hand, and that even the strongest walls cannot hold back memory. If you and I were to walk together across Tower Green at twilight, the city lights glowing beyond the walls, perhaps we would hear only the murmur of the river. But perhaps, from the shadows, we would glimpse the faint outline of a queen in a dark gown, or hear the quiet footsteps of two lost princes forever seeking the childhood stolen from them. And so, the Tower of London closes our journey, a place where history and haunting are bound so tightly that one cannot exist without the other. Its whispers remind us that every castle, no matter how grand, carries not only the triumphs of its builders, but also the sorrows of its ghosts.